Okay, when you think of a great historic fire in America, your mind probably jumps straight to one place: Chicago, right? But what if I told you that on the very same day, a much, much deadlier fire, a true monster, was raging just a few hundred miles away, and that somehow it's been almost completely forgotten? Well, this is that story. This is the story of the Peshtigo fire.
I mean, just look at these numbers. It's staggering. On the right, that's the Great Chicago Fire, a huge tragedy. We all learn about it in school, around 300 deaths. Now look to the left, the Peshtigo Fire. The estimates go as high as 2,500 people killed. That's more than 8 times deadlier. So the question is, how is it possible that for most of us, this is the first time we're even hearing its name?
And here's the unbelievable twist, the cosmic coincidence that basically sealed Peshtigo's fate in our history books. Both of these disasters, the one we all remember and the one we all forgot, they happened on the exact same day, October 8th, 1871. Just incredible. So, to really understand why this fire was so catastrophic and why it's so important we remember it, we first need to grasp the sheer scale of this forgotten inferno. This is really the heart of the mystery, isn't it? How does the single deadliest wildfire in all of recorded history just get pushed aside, eclipsed by an event that, while absolutely tragic, wasn't even in the same league of lethality? Well, the answer is complicated, and it really begins with the terrifying, almost perfect conditions that allowed the fire to be born in the first place. So let's dig into that. Let's look at the conditions that made this all possible. Because this wasn't just a random fire. It was the result of a horrifyingly perfect setup. A real tinderbox. I mean, this right here is a recipe for absolute disaster. First off, you've got a severe, long-term drought that left the entire region bone dry. Then add in the common practice of slash and burn logging, which basically meant there were all these small, unattended fires just smoldering all over the landscape. All it needed was one final ingredient, and that came in the form of a powerful cold front, which brought with it some incredibly strong winds. But that wind didn't just spread the flames. It created something else entirely. We need to look at the anatomy of what this thing became: a firestorm. And this is the key. You have to understand this wasn't an ordinary forest fire. It evolved. It became a firestorm, which is a fire so huge and so intense that it literally creates and sustains its own weather, its own violent wind system. The numbers here are just, they're hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about superheated flames hitting 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The storm was creating its own winds, hurricane-force winds, at 110 miles per hour or even stronger. This thing was a roaring column of fire thousands of feet across. To even try and put that kind of power into words, the authors Denise Guess and William Lutz described it as a blow-up nature's nuclear explosion. It's a chilling comparison, but when you look at the science of what was happening, it feels frighteningly accurate. People who were there, who saw it with their own eyes, they struggled to even describe it. One eyewitness, Reverend Peter Pernin, reported that the fire didn't just cross the river, it seemed to literally jump across it and started burning both sides of the town at the same time. You can imagine seeing that. It's like the laws of physics were just breaking down in front of you. And if you need any more proof of its incredible power, listen to this. The firestorm didn't just burn things, it picked them up and threw them. Survivors said it generated a fire whirl, which is exactly what it sounds like, a tornado made of pure fire. It was strong enough to toss railroad cars and even whole houses through the air. You know, an event this extreme, this strange, it was bound to create some unusual theories. So let's take a look at the myths that grew out of this, and then the devastating reality of the aftermath. For years, there's been this persistent theory floating around, and you can kind of see why. Multiple huge fires erupting on the same day across the Midwest, it felt like it had to be something bigger, something extraterrestrial. So, could it have been fragments from a comet that started it all? Well, let's break it down. People who believed the comet theory pointed to reports of weird blue flames in basements as proof of cometary gases. But the scientific explanation is actually pretty simple. That was likely just carbon monoxide burning in spaces that didn't have enough oxygen. And what about all the fires starting at once? Well, no outside ignition was needed. As we already saw, there were dozens of little fires already smoldering. All it took was that one big gust of wind. Comet or not, the reality of the destruction is what's truly horrifying. Let's just try to comprehend this, one number at a time. The fire burned 1.2 million acres. To put that in perspective, that's an area roughly the size of the entire state of Delaware. And in that path of destruction, 17 entire communities were not just damaged, they were wiped out, gone, erased from the map. And then there's the human toll, the most devastating number of all. An estimated 1,500 to 2,500 people lost their lives. And the reason we can't give you a more precise number is just heartbreaking. Every local record, every census document, it was all incinerated. In one case, more than 350 bodies were buried together in a single mass grave, for the simple, tragic reason that there was no one left alive in the area who could identify any of them. So after all of this, what did we learn? This brings us to something called the Peshtigo paradigm, and the fire's very strange and very telling legacy. That unique, perfect storm of circumstances that created the disaster, it actually got a name. Scientists call it the Peshtigo paradigm. It's the technical term for that exact mix of geography, high winds, and existing fires that can create a firestorm. And this might be the most shocking part of the entire story. Look at who learned from this tragedy and what they learned. The US and British militaries, they studied the Peshtigo paradigm all right. They studied it to figure out how to recreate firestorms during the bombing campaigns of World War II. But the lumber industry, whose practices helped cause it all, they learned almost nothing. They made virtually no changes to how they did things. And if you need proof, this timeline says it all. In the decades right after 1871, this devastating cycle of major fires just kept happening in Wisconsin, again and again and again. The lessons of Peshtigo were tragically ignored, right there on the ground where it all happened. So we're left with this question. The Peshtigo fire, America's deadliest, was lost in the shadow of a bigger, more famous disaster. It really makes you wonder, what other crucial stories, what other major historical events have been lost in the shadows, just waiting to be remembered?